Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter. And I'd like to welcome back to our show our co-host from Pack Your Pixie Dust. How are you doing today, Christy?
I am well. How are you, Steve?
Not too bad. I'm super excited about this guest that we're having on today.
I am too.
We are bringing back, she used to be one of the original members of the Disney Moms Park panel. And kind of looking at her bio, she's been on, I think, just every Disney vacation you can go on. I'd like to welcome back to the show Erin Foster from The Unofficial Guide.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, welcome back, Erin. Let's get some background on you. I know we've got a lot of new listeners since you were on last time. How did you become involved with The Unofficial Guide?
Well, as you mentioned, I was one of the founding members or original members of the Disney Moms panel, and that was my tenure there started in 2008, so eons ago. And I did that off and on for about 4 years. And going down for events related to that, and it was sort of the beginning of the Disney social media push and everything. I started to meet other like bloggers and people that were in the social media Disney space. And so, I met AJ from the Disney Food Blog, and I met Len and like Matt Hochberg and a lot of other people. And it was actually a guy on the Moms panel, Bernie Edwards, who is a NASA person who he was interested in a lot of the science behind touring plans and The Unofficial Guide, and he became buddies with Len. I sort of started talking to Len through Bernie, and Len was like, "Do you want to write?" When my time at the Moms panel started to wind down, and I was like, "Okay, sure." And so, one thing led to another.
What a great, I don't even know how to make the sentence come out, but path. I guess that's the right.
Yeah. And people ask me all the time, how did you get started? And I was like, I really just lucked into like a whole lot of things in a row. And it worked out. And it's, again, I had been going as a tourist, as a visitor, as a person to Disney World for many years, but it was really just a lot of lucky things that got me onto the Moms panel and then got me to meet a lot of people in the Disney blogosphere. And it's, now I have a book you can buy on Amazon. And so for me, it's been a really great path, really wonderful.
How did the idea get born, I guess? So there was the Walt Disney World book and there's the Disneyland books. But then how did you guys who decided, hey, let's do a Disney Cruise Line book?
That was really all Len. And I was not involved in that part of it. I think the first unofficial Disney Cruise Line book was in 2014, and I had been writing for the Touring Plans blog, and had some success there. And Len's like, we're going to do this cruise book. Do you want to work on it? And I was like, okay. And at that time, I had only been on just a few cruises, and he's like, okay, so go on some more cruises. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And then he was really he and his partner Laurel did a lot of the work in the first couple, and I did sort of a lot of the research, and then over the last seven editions it sort of changed balance, and Len does more of the numbers and the financial analysis that's in the book now, and I write almost everything else at this point.
So speaking of that research, then how do you do some of that? Because it's amazing how much information you have in this book. We just did a show with somebody who used the special services part of Disney Cruise Line because they have a special needs child who has autism. And I didn't realize how much information you had in the book on autism and for people traveling with special needs. How do you do some of the research then? Do you continue to take, several cruises a year, or how do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Taking several cruises a year. I was on the New Year's Eve cruise on the Fantasy just a few weeks ago. I'm lucky that I'm still in touch with a lot of the Moms panelists who they themselves go on a lot of cruises, and they have a pretty wide-ranging demographic, including many that have special needs, children or family members. And it's talking to people like when I'm on the ships, I'll talk to anybody, anytime about anything. And so I actually ran into somebody on my most recent cruise that I had met on an ABD trip a couple of years before, and ended up spending like an hour talking to their son, who had just graduated from the Oceaneer stuff into Edge. And I was like, he was a really articulate kid. And it was like, I'm interviewing this kid, to get his insights into Edge, because my own children have aged out of that. So, a lot of it is, I have Google Alerts set up for every possible permutation of Disney Cruise. And I subscribe to various, cruise-related magazines and cruise-related blogs. And I just talk to everybody that I can that's been on a Disney cruise, or, or even while I'm on a cruise. I'll talk to people I meet at Mixology, that sort of thing. And as far as the autism thing goes, fortunate that there's a page written in the book from a woman named Allison Singer, who is the president of the Autism Science Foundation, who is a neighbor of mine. And she has taken her special needs daughter on Disney cruises several times. And I said, could you tell me about your experience with that? And she ended up writing a section in the book, which was great.
I actually read that letter on there, and it's a section of the book that we haven't had to use because we don't have a need with it for our family, but I was just amazed to see how much information is really packed into this book, and I just wanted to make sure that we kind of got that out to all our listeners, how much information really is in there, depending upon what your needs are with your cruise coming up. So I'm kind of curious, how has your role kind of changed as the unofficial guide and information changes for people out there? Initially, they had books. And now with the internet being so much more pervasive, I was looking on the Unofficial Guide site this morning, and you've got an article about adults only experiences on the Disney Wonder. It's a great article for people to read, and those are some of the questions we get all the time. What do you recommend on the Wonder? What do you recommend for adults only? How has your role kind of changed?
Well, my role for the Disney Cruise Line is I write the book, and then occasionally the wonderful people at the Unofficial Guides ask me to write a blog post or two. So I think I end up doing that, 3 or 4 times a year, write a blog post for them. But there's a lot more information also on touringplans.com. So the Unofficial Guide and Touring Plans are friends, but they're not married. And so we have there's some overlap on the planning and stuff that's on touringplans.com and is in the book. So if people prefer that, that's another way to get the information. And the book is also available electronically. For Kindle and Nook and whatever other. So if people prefer to read that way, that's certainly available.
Let's turn to the new 2020 guide that just came out about a month and a half ago, I believe, or it's probably been longer than that.
in December. Yeah.
In December. What are some of the new things that you guys have added for people this year?
We added a lot more stuff. Well, as I mentioned, I do a lot of monitoring of different online sources about what things are people asking. I'm in like every single Facebook group related to Disney Cruise Line, and I monitor what kinds of questions people ask a lot. And so this year I happened to notice that there were more questions about photography and shopping. So we delved into that more. We covered more, although there truly isn't that much out yet about the new ships. We added some more that we did know. And I added a lot more about the ABD embed options because Disney is adding more of those. So, adding an ABD on top of your Disney cruise. So there's a lot more coverage of that this year.
That is one of the things we wanted to talk about. Have you done the ABD add-on? And I guess for the listeners, what this is Adventures by Disney is the land portion, the land tour portion of the Disney company. You're not going to find Mickey Mouse on the tour, but you will find great tour guides and immersive experiences. So I believe it was within the last year, they added on these ABD tours so that when you're on a Disney cruise at each of the port, you can do a tour stop or you can do an ABD tour within the cruise. Have you been on one of those tours?
I have. They've had them for a long time, actually. The first one I was on the Med in, I want to say 2012, 2013.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they've had them for a while.
Oh, it's the Caribbean that's new.
Right, the Caribbean is new, and they had Alaska, and then they took it away, and I think it's back now. But the Caribbean part is new. So I have been on the ABD add-ons myself on the Mediterranean and the Northern European ones, and I've done 2 of the ABD river cruises. I've also done many of the land ones. ABD is my absolute favorite part of Disney. I mean, I go on, I spend at least a month at Disney World every year. I go on several Disney cruises every year. ABD is my favorite.
So what of the add-ons of the ABD cruise portion have you done?
The two that I've done for the ABD add-ons are the ones in the Mediterranean and the Northern European. So what happens is you're basically having Disney select your port adventures rather than selecting them yourselves. And there's a bunch of reasons why you would want to do that, and there's some why you wouldn't want to do that. So a lot of it is you just don't want to make the decisions. So what I do all day, every day is like plan other people's trips. And I kind of like that somebody else is doing all the legwork for me. And so I was actually just talking to my husband about this. We're planning another ABD trip for 2021. And I was talking about how I really like how ABD will make it so you don't go crazy on your excursions. And what I mean by that is that they will find a really good balance of like one day you're doing museums all day. And like if you did 7 museum days in a row, you'd be like, especially if you had little kids, you'd be gouging your eyes out. But they balance like an animal encounter day with museum days, with culinary days, with something sporty like biking or zip lining. And they make a really good balance. And they've done the research on what are the things that are sort of either truly emblematic of a certain place or are the best quality, adventure you can have in this place. And they'll often be able to get you to have experiences that are not available to the general public. Like they take away the anxiety portion of it. So the ABD group is the first group off the ship. They're going to hold the ship for you if you're running a little late, if they can at all. And when I did the ABD embed on Northern European, one of our stops was St. Petersburg, Russia. And our group, which was like 35 people, had the entire Hermitage Museum to ourselves for almost 2 hours, which is absolutely unheard of. And then like ABD will get you some private time in the Sistine Chapel. I did the pre-embed in Barcelona, and we got to the front of the line at Sagrada Familia when the line was like literally a mile long. So you get to have some special experiences and you get to have all the friction taken away from the experiences. So it just makes life incredibly easy. And then they think of things that you wouldn't think of yourself, like balancing the flow of your day, or the guides are all Disney trained. Like they work in entertainment or in guest services during the year, almost all of them. And so they know Disney service and Disney culture. And so they're there with like, if it's hot out, they've got paper fans for you. They've got water bottles and snacks. They've got hand sanitizer and duct tape and Band-Aids. And they know, like a couple times I've had people on my ABD trips with like minor medical issues. They know where the clinic is. They know how to get you there. They know where the clean restrooms are in every stop. They just make it easier.
All right. Now I need to do that.
It's awesome.
I'm trying to figure out like what we did. We went to St. Petersburg with NCL. And we did a skip the line tour or whatever. So we were there pretty early, and there were still like several groups. I was kind of curious. What time were you at the Hermitage Museum to have it to yourself? That's amazing.
It was in the evening.
It was in the evening. Okay. Yeah.
It was like, I want to say like 7 p.m.-ish, Yeah, it was in the evening.
St. Petersburg's amazing. I would love to go back there. Well, for those who are unable to, or it just doesn't work for them to do ABD, you guys do a wonderful job about, describing each one of the ports in the guidebook as well. And upcoming this year, they are Disney sailing back to Greece. And I noticed that in the 2020 guide, you've got a lot of information on each one of the ports that the Disney Magic's stopping in as well. How do you find the information for that?
Again, talking to people. One of my daughters actually went on vacation to Greece about a year ago. And so I tasked her with like doing some research. Really, like one of the mom's panelists has family in Greece and she goes often, and I quiz her, and, and then I do a lot of research. Again, it's like journalism. It's reading background stuff. I go to the library and look at stuff. I talk to people who've been, really as much as possible if it's a new place or a place I haven't been. But then between the unofficial guide team, we all try to go to these places, obviously. So at this point, either Len or I or somebody at the unofficial guide has been to almost all of the ports, at least once, if not several times. Yeah, I mean, Nassau, I think between us, we've had, I don't know, 40 or 50 visits. So, that one we know cold. But newer ports, it's secondary research, firsthand interviews with people who have been, that sort of thing. But, there are enough of us that in the Touring Plans team or the unofficial guide team that have been to all of these places that we have a lot of firsthand insight as well.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. We're going to ask you this at the end, but maybe I'll ask this a couple different times. One of the questions we get a lot is, could you talk more about the ports and what we should do in each one of the ports? Do you have any tips because of the amount of cruises you've been on, and not anything specific per port, but do you have any tips for, that first-time sailor, first-time cruiser, as far as how to research for the different ports, or do you have any tips for the first-time cruisers, I guess?
By the unofficial guide.
Yes. By the unofficial guide. A lot of it, before you even start deciding what you want to do, is to figure out a budget. Mm-hmm. So, there are going to be some excursions that are like on Castaway Cay, you can rent a bike for, I think it's $13 now, and that's not going to break your budget. There are some of the, Alaska helicopter tour to the glacier is going to run you a couple $1,000s. And so, the first thing is to have a sort of realistic look at your own personal finances to see what it is you want to do. Look at on the DCL website, there is a lot of information about accessibility, age ranges. For some ports, there's weight ranges for some of the activities. Is food included? Like if you have a dietary issue, that might or might not be a deal breaker. So the first thing you want to do is look at your budget and then look at the DCL website to figure out, are some of these things even a possibility for you? We also have some resources in the book about non-Disney excursions that you might want to do instead. That might not be the right thing for the first-time cruiser. The first-time cruiser might want the sort of comfort of, I know that Disney knows where I am and that sort of thing. Maybe after, maybe third or fourth cruise, you want to go off and explore a city on your own, that sort of thing. Yeah, and again, think about your family, your own family as well. Do you have a senior citizen who doesn't want to walk a lot? Do you have a toddler who needs to nap? Be realistic about what you can physically do. Another thing to look at is what amount of time for the excursion is spent doing the activity versus travel to and from the activity. So there's some of the pyramids in Mexico where the excursion, the visiting the pyramid, visiting the site is maybe 2 or 3 hours, but the transport back and forth is 3 hours each way. So is that a good use of your time? There's a lot of stuff you can do before you even think about, excursion A versus excursion B, just like, are either of these excursions even right for my family at all, sort of thing.
It's really good advice. I agree. Don't you, Steve, that unless you're a real seasoned traveler going on your first time cruise or maybe have been to the ports before on a land vacation, it really is a good idea to start with the cruise line's excursions to get your feet wet, to get the experience, to just see how it all works. Yeah. Even seeing how to get on and off the ship, it's its own thing, and making sure you have the things with you that you need and all of that, just as a test, if you will.
Right, exactly. And, maybe if you're on an 11-day cruise, and there are a few of those, do the Disney cruise, the Disney excursions for the first couple of days, maybe, and then plan a more elaborate on your own one for the end of the trip. But if you're on your first cruise and it's a 3 or 4 night, on the Dream out of Port Canaveral, just stick with the basics. If you want to go out and do a planned excursion.
How do you typically cruise? I guess it depends if you're researching, and you're always probably researching, but versus doing what you want. Do you do an excursion in every port?
It depends on the port. So, for instance, I've done enough of say Nassau, that I don't really do the Disney excursions anymore. And I try to find a little more out of the way stuff. Some depends on who I'm with. A lot depends on what my family's in the mood for, if they're with me. So for instance, on this most recent cruise I was on the Fantasy on New Year's Eve, there was one port where two of my daughters and my husband wanted to go to the beach, and the other daughter just wasn't in the mood for the beach. And so we took a walk, and we just walked all over the island, and it was one that had some hurricane damage. And so we got to see how they were rebuilding, and that was really interesting. And also for the book, it depends on, again, if there's something we haven't covered or if there's something new, Len or I or whoever is working will try to, make a special attempt to go on something that's new or interesting or that we haven't covered before.
Who is covering the New Orleans cruises? Anybody?
Not right now. No, we don't have anybody on those yet.
So what is that thought process then? Who has those thoughts about whether we should cover it? What made you guys think not to go there? Just because so many cruises have gone to New Orleans and there's 3 ports that have already been covered a million times, or...
Some of it, frankly, is budget. Some of it is
right. You can't go do everything.
Right. Some of it is I've been to New Orleans several times. Len has been a couple times, I believe. The ports are not all new, that sort of thing. Yeah, and then some of it is our own scheduling. What our own families can do and where our breaks are and that sort of thing. So I'm sure we will eventually get there.
Do you ever cruise other cruise lines or only Disney?
Somebody asked me this recently. I have only been on Disney. Len has been on Royal and Norwegian and at least one other, Holland. So he has been on a lot more than I have.
So I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit too. Another question we get a lot of is the kids clubs. And I'm curious, you said you talked to a pretty articulate boy who had been in Vibe and Edge. What was his thoughts, and what did he say about those 2 different clubs?
One of the things he went on great detail about was that he really liked graduating from the Oceaneers to Edge, that the food experience was different for him. So in the younger kids clubs, it's all very regimented about, little kids, obviously many of them have allergies or food intolerances or whatever. And so they are very strict about where the food can be. And so they can't bring any, a 10-year-old couldn't bring in popcorn or chicken nuggets or whatever, but they do let them bring their own food into the older kids clubs. And he found that they make them keep it in a table, but they can bring it in and they have a little more control over that. And he found that very freeing. So I thought that was an interesting observation that I'm going to include next time. Also, he really liked the ability to come and go as he wanted to, which was not possible in the younger clubs. And he talked about how that made him feel more grown up and it made him feel more in control of his own vacation and that sort of thing. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. It's a food thing I wouldn't not necessarily have thought of on my own.
Right.
I've definitely seen that in our kids too. I mean, it kind of gives, as our older son, when he moved from the Oceaneers Club and Lab up to the Edge, and now he's super excited this summer he's going to be able to go to the Vibe finally. Mm-hmm. It's kind of empowering for them to, gain that confidence of,
right.
Going to the clubs themselves, making friends, and spending time, with them out and about around the ship. So it's kind of a great opportunity for them to learn a lot of things while they're on the ship as well. So
right, a lot of self-control and time management, and
right,
for some kids who are sort of, micromanaged at home, for good or for bad, it can be a really freeing experience to have that measure of control over their own, what's fun, what's not fun. Am I going with the crowd? Do I feel comfortable speaking up that I want to do this or don't want to do this? How am I dealing with new people in new situations? So it's I think it's a really good learning experience in a controlled environment.
Definitely. Even our youngest, the last 2 cruises we've been on, he pulls up the app, he finds out the things he wants to do in the lab. He's 9 now. So I guess he was 8 on the last one. He finds the things he wants to do. And several times while we're having dinner, he would go, you know what? I'm skipping dessert. They're having super sloppy science or something like that.
Right,
he's gone.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of fun to see them kind of grow that way. Well, I'm kind of curious also, Aaron, since you have cruised with Disney so much, how have you seen Disney Cruise Line change over the years? What are some of the things that you've noticed or seen that you either like, or I guess you can talk about dislike stuff, but let's just stick with the stuff you like. How's that?
Well, I think they do a pretty good job of updating the spaces for the times. I mean, they changed, the Route 66, which was getting tired. They changed that to more contemporary. They changed the restaurants, they changed the theming. One thing that I really like is that they're changing the shows to be more, less of, we were calling them the jukebox musicals, where you have one song from Cinderella and one song from Aladdin, and why are they together? Who really knows? And it's just, other than Disney, my family's biggest hobby is we live quite near New York City, and we go to the theater, Broadway theater, almost weekly. And so I'm very savvy about theater and storytelling and that sort of thing. And it was almost painful sometimes to go to the jukebox shows with the really cheesy, let's mash up these things that have nothing to do with each other. And I really, really love that they're putting so much attention to the shows now. I mean, the Frozen show, I just saw it on the Fantasy a couple weeks ago. It's just beautiful, and that they're doing better with the technology. And frankly, I think the performers are a little better. Just really top quality people. So I like that a lot.
We've had a lot of good feedback about Beauty and the Beast as well, as far as that show.
Yeah.
Would you happen to know, is there any crossover between Disney on Broadway and the cruise ships, as far as, kind of working together to really, upscale is not the right word, to really, improve the shows that are on board the ships?
I know they all know each other. I actually don't think that there's a lot of crossover. However, I haven't had an interesting experience where one of my favorite Broadway shows of all time was Avenue Q. And so I had a big birthday a couple of years ago, and my family got me as a present a backstage tour of Avenue Q. And one of the lead players was the one who gave us the backstage tour. And he had been a performer, and he played Woody in the Toy Story show that had been on The Wonder a couple of years ago. So, those people are really Broadway quality people often, and many of them do eventually end up, on the stage in New York, having started on the ships. But I don't know that there's so much cross-pollination. It's, something great to have on their resume, but I don't know that there's an exact pipeline through.
So one doesn't help them get a job at the other, maybe.
Well, I'm sure.
Except they have it on the resume, but yeah, I guess the people, right? They're not in the same company.
I mean, I can't speak with 100% confidence about this, but they don't often. Sometimes you'll see it in the playbills that somebody had worked on, Disney Cruise Line or whatever, but not all the time.
Let's also turn to kind of that adult space you're talking about with Route 66. Have you seen kind of that change because there's so many people sailing on Disney Cruise Line that don't have kids. I mean, it seems like half the people that we have on our show, right, Christy? It seems like, generally it's people that don't have kids. So how have you seen kind of Disney up the game for those type of travelers?
That's one thing I would like to see them do a little better. I mean, there's more mixology. There's more of every kind of drinking thing, which is not everybody's, game necessarily. They're doing well with, they have some adult spaces at the pools. On the larger ships, there's, adult decks up. There's adult bars in the evening, but that's something that I hope when they have the new ships that there are a couple more innovative adult things to do, or more adult times on. I mean, I wish I knew the things that they were putting on the Wish, but
yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But, we wish you did too.
If they, let's say, for example, and I literally have no inside knowledge, so whatever, but let's say they have a rock wall. I hope that they have adult rock wall climb hour or something like that, for adults who are not necessarily wanting to drink all the time. My family, my girls are all now over 18, so we do a lot of trivia. That's one thing that we really, really love. And I feel like the adults on the ships are so competitive with the trivia. I feel like they will go. I mean, we win every once in a while, but it's I feel like they go on a cruise and then write down the answers and then go on the cruise.
Somebody said they do. One of our listeners said that he suspected that somebody was doing that.
What is the point? You get a plastic medal.
And Steve, we know you want the plastic medal, but don't do that. I don't think you'll ever do that.
How many plastic medals does a person really need?
Yeah, the only time we ever won, Aaron, was on just a random sailing out of San Diego, and I think there was only two other couples in the bar for the trivia, and so I think we got 13 of them right in one. So that kind of shows you where the competition was there. Because usually it's a lot stiffer than that. So,
do you think they'll ever do a drink package, an all-inclusive package like every other line right now out there has? Not that I want a bunch of drunk people, but frankly, there's already drunk people on the Disney cruise without the drink package.
I don't know.
Would you like to see them do that, or you don't care?
I'm personally not a huge drinker, and I think it's maybe part of their selling point is that they're for families, and families don't want to see as many drunk people, But again, maybe there'll be like a more of an adults only zone on one of the new ships. I don't really know.
Well, I'm also kind of curious about your thoughts with, as the ships have kind of reinvented themselves, they added Tiana's place on the Wonder, they have Rapunzel's Royal Table on the Magic, and I always forget the name of the bar that's on the Wonder now too. What are your thoughts on those spaces, and what would you like to see come on possibly the Wish and one of the other newer ships?
I like the theming, but again, you talk about adults versus families. One thing I wanted to add was that for adults, that it's not just the adults only things that are necessarily interesting. Like, for instance, my husband, who is, a man of a certain age, his literal favorite thing to do on Disney Cruise Line is the diaper dash. He loves watching.
He could never have guessed that would be what's going on.
He is obsessed with the diaper dash, and the first thing we have to do is look at the Navigator app and find out what day is the diaper dash, and we are not scheduling anything else. And so he and my now young adult daughters, they will bet actual cash money on the diaper dash. They will
fantastic.
They will scout. I mean, it's like $10 among family or whatever, but it's like they will scout the babies and they will have these strategies. And, so the shows in the theaters and even things silly like the racing babies in the diaper dash are fun for adults too. Like, if you go into it with a light heart, anything can be for grown-ups. But getting back to your theming in the restaurants, I like it. I like Disney, so I like themed things, and so I like when the entertainment and the food and the decor is all sort of matched. One of the things that I have a little bit of a problem with in the Rapunzel's and Tiana's is that it's very loud. So when they have the music going, you can barely talk to your family. So, and I've heard that from a lot of other people as well. So that's the kind of thing you want to write on your survey at the end. I like the idea of the theming. I wish that it was a little more, just quieter, frankly, so you could have a conversation with your family while the mayhem is happening around you.
When my son was an infant, he's going to be 7 this summer now, but his first cruise, he was 10 months old. Well, his first cruise, he was 7 months old, but on Disney, he was 10 months old. Everything was so loud, I felt like I had to cover his little baby ears. And thinking, even the diaper dash was super loud.
Right.
And that's just people being excited about it. Right. And then I think that freaked out my kid because he was an amazing crawler at 10 months old. But man, as soon as all that noise started, he froze and started crying.
Oh, I love it as a spectator. For my own kids, it would have been absolutely terrifying. And that's part of the, as we bet, that's one of our things. Yes. It's which one is going to get spooked by the screaming?
Yep. That was totally my kid.
No, but you're right. It is a little loud, and you have to be aware of that, particularly if you have a family member with sensory processing issues or something like that. Yeah.
I got kind of a weird question. Have you ever eaten up at Cabanas in the evening?
I have.
Yeah. What do you think of that? Yeah.
Particularly on a longer sailing, I think it can be a great break. Again, if you want to get away from the noise, or a couple of times we've done it when the timing didn't work out. We were getting back from an excursion, and we had the first seating, and we wanted time to relax or shower when we got back. Or a couple of times when we were just starving and was we could eat room service cheese or go get nuggets, and then we'll be too full for dinner, or that sort of thing. So it's a much more relaxed pace, and the food is pretty good. If it's your first cruise and you're on a 3-night on the Dream, I wouldn't necessarily do it. But if you've sailed several times and are familiar with the main dining rooms already, it can be relaxing. It can be and you have a little more control over when you want to eat, that sort of thing. So, and one of my issues sometimes with the main dining rooms is that depending on your server and what's going on, it can be a very long meal. And particularly if you have the second seating, you might not want to be finishing dinner at 10:30 or whatever. So to me, it's a little easier to just sort of like eat a piece of chicken quickly and then leave if you're up at Cabanas.
That's kind of been our experience too. We've eaten up there probably 3 or 4 times, and either because, like you said, we got back late on an excursion, we didn't make our dining time or whatever else, and we've always found it to be a really enjoyable dinner up there too. So kind of a change of pace. But like you said, probably if it's your first cruise, you wouldn't want to be doing that. Well, you kind of talked about some of the feedback you've got. What's kind of been the theming of the feedback you've gotten over the last couple of years as far as Disney Cruise Line, either from the kids club's perspective, the ships, the shore excursions? What are some of the things you're hearing that people want or would like to see?
Yeah, I feel like everybody's been sort of holding their breath for the last couple of years since they announced that there are going to be new ships. What do people want? People want everything. People want bigger kids' places. People want, one of the main things I've heard a lot is people want cabins that sleep more than 4 easily. So there are some that sleep 5, but then you're kind of cramped. So I think people want cabins for different size groups. Do you want your kids in the same room? Do you not want your kids in the same room? Do you want to pay for a second stateroom? I think that's a lot of like what's the configuration of the staterooms going to be. Some people have mentioned that they want more physical activities. So, for instance, right now there's like the basketball court up on the pool deck and
the putt-putt, which is very cute.
The putt-putt, but it's not really like, you're not going to work up a sweat for and the gyms are great, but that's only for grown-ups. So something where, an athletic 14-year-old could work up a sweat on after 3 sea days in a row, that sort of thing. That would be nice. Yeah,
family spaces like Royal Caribbean has. Royal Caribbean, in my opinion, isn't perfect about everything, but their ships are pretty amazing. They have a lot of activities that families can do together so that they have the kids clubs where the kids can go. But sometimes for a lot of people, when they're taking the family vacation, they want to have family time because everybody's working and, the kids are in school and activities. And so this is their time to spend together. And if the only activity is to swim in the pool or, like you said, play basketball, I can see that where some more activities for people that want to do them.
One thing to be really conscious of is the ages of the kids in your group. And I ran into this as my daughters started to age from teen to adult, Disney Cruise Line is incredibly strict about ages, and they know how old you are because they have your passport or your birth certificate. So, like if you're at Walt Disney World and I'm going to get the age wrong, but like let's say it's Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique is you have to be 3. Like if you have a really well-behaved 2-year and 11-month-old kid who can sit still and whatever. No, but you're not bringing your birth certificate to Disney World. They're going to let the kid get her hair done. It's not at all like that on the cruise line. They know exactly how old you are, and the age rules are the age rules. So I've seen several situations where you've got cousins or siblings or whatever, and one's 17 and one's 18, and they cannot do anything together on the ship because whatever laws are like once they turn 18, even if it's in the middle of a cruise, they are done with the kids clubs. And so
I hadn't thought about that aspect of it.
No, it's really tough. And so I make a point actually to go up there when they have the open house on the first day and watch the families come in and try to register. So on several occasions, I've seen siblings or cousins or friends go up there and try to register for the Vibe Club. And if some are 18, it's like their faces just sink because they can't do stuff together. And it's very frustrating for some families.
Well, and kids are starting school later. So my kid started at 5, but most of his classmates are turning 6, like at kindergarten, for example, right after the school year started. So they're already going to be older. So they could, they'll be in the 12th grade, but then they're not going to be allowed in the kids club anymore.
Right. And I had the opposite experience actually with my oldest daughter, who is very young for her grade. And she had graduated from high school, and her birthday's in the summer. She was a high school graduate.
Yeah,
she was,
mine too.
She was into college. She was like truly better behaved than I ever could hope to be. and they wouldn't let her into Palo.
Right.
Because she was a couple days, like literally days away from turning 18.
We've had the same thing with shore excursions too. Our youngest one, I can't remember where we were, but we wanted to do a kayak tour, and our youngest is kayak since he's like 2, and I totally get. And they put there's an age restriction was like 8 or something like that, and so we ended up going with an outside company and not using Disney's. And actually, this cruise we're doing this summer, our oldest is 13 when he steps on the ship. He turns 14 the next day, so that first day, I guess, it's 14 to 17 for the Vibe. I can't remember. I know they have like a little bit of leeway between the Vibe
there's some that there's a 1 year overlap where they can choose.
Yeah, so we may have to deal with that too when we get on. Anyways, I digress on that part with him on that one. So
it's tough because on one hand there has to be these limitations because everybody would take advantage of it, right?
Right.
But,
right. Yeah.
And it's tricky because what do you do how do you make everybody happy? That's just not going to happen. But yeah, I agree. About the age thing, I just renewed my annual pass. Well, I rebought new annual passes for Walt Disney World. They asked for every one of our birth dates. Mm-hmm. So you could lie about your birth date, obviously. You could lie about your child's birthday, but like the date, the year, they asked for everything on all of our annual passes. So that is new from the last time I bought an annual pass.
As we kind of finish up here, we talked about, tips for first-time cruises as far as shore excursions. Do you have any other tips for first-time cruisers, Erin, from your experience just overall sailing with Disney Cruise Line?
Take it slow. Don't try to feel like you have to do everything. It's schedule in, if you're a schedule person, schedule in 2 hours where you're going to sit and read a book on your veranda or out on the pool deck or that sort of thing. I know it's very, very tempting to try to pack in every activity, but make sure you relax as well. And people, sometimes first-time cruisers are really scared of sea days. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be bored? Sea days are my absolute favorite because you can do a couple things. You can go to a trivia or a towel folding class or whatever, but then you can also just sit in a movie or read a book or my family often brings board games, Bananagrams or Uno. I mean, something really silly and ridiculous. And that's how you're going to have fun. It doesn't have to be like some organized activity. Your kids are going to remember the silly things that you did. So try not to overschedule is my word of advice. I
agree with that statement completely.
Yeah, I remember just the first cruise we went with my parents, and I remember sitting out at the Cove Cafe at night after dinner, and the kids were down in the club, and it was just an awesome time to be able to sit and talk, which we just don't get a lot of time when you're at home, to like just talk about all different kinds of things, and instead of the problems, or not necessarily problems, but all the stuff that you're facing at home, we were talking about all the different trips that we'd taken over when my brother and I were kids, and you're right, it's a small moment sometimes like that are not. You don't necessarily have to schedule where you're going to really build those memories.
Right.
So, Christy, you had some lightning round questions. Why don't we jump into that?
I do. So I asked this one now. I've asked of all our co-hosts, and so we're working it into the podcast. But what is your favorite meal? So main dining room meals on a Disney cruise.
I love escargot, and the only place I ever eat escargot is on Disney Cruise.
That you are just speaking Steve's love language just now.
It's like, garlic and butter. What could be wrong? Exactly. So I like that.
The snail, but
the snail. Yeah,
that could be wrong, but all right.
My kids like the tuna tartare avocado tower thing, but I'm all about the snails.
You get them on more than one night. Steve gets them multiple nights in a row.
Really?
Yeah, you can ask for them because
I know you can ask for them. That's very bold. Sometimes I feel like there's only so much butter and garlic a human body can process.
Maybe that's the difference. Steve apparently doesn't have a limit to butter and garlic.
Well, between the escargot and what are those little things that I think it's at Rapunzel's Royal Table, the little pasta packets with the mushrooms.
Oh, the pasta purses.
Yeah, that's on every cruise.
Is it on every cruise? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, right, yeah, and then...
Oh, go on.
No, I mean, I try at home to, like, kind of lay low on the carbs, but they just put that bread on the table every time. I just eat the bread and be really happy.
And the butter, just something about fresh butter, too, or the dipping sauces and stuff like that. So, what's your favorite lounge on a Disney cruise?
Recently, I've spent some time at Meridian, and it's nice because it's quiet up there. But I like the small ships that have the piano bars. I really like, having a cocktail with the piano music, and everybody's maybe sometimes sings along to the Billy Joel or whatever. I find that relaxing.
For sure. What is your favorite show on a DCL ship?
I've seen Frozen most recently, and I was really taken by how well the special effects were done. But I have a soft spot for Tangled because I just love those lanterns at the end. That makes me really, really warm and fuzzy.
All right. So then these are the last two questions, and you can answer them in any order. But what has been your ultimate favorite Disney cruise? And then what is your go-to favorite Disney cruise?
My absolute favorite Disney cruise was Northern Europe. They sort of blend together because we did the two different Northern Europe ones in consecutive summers. The one that went to Russia we did one year, and then the one that went to Iceland and down to Scotland the next year. And so that, because we did in consecutive years, they sort of blend together. But that part of the world I just found incredibly lovely, just fascinating. And what is my go-to? Sometimes I'm a very bad insomniac, and I sleep. The best I ever sleep anywhere is on the cruise line. So I'm
exactly the same. I haven't been sleeping for 2 weeks, but on Saturday or Sunday when I get on a cruise, I will be sleeping for a week, and I can't even wait. Right.
So I literally have threatened my husband, just send me down, put me on a 3-night on the Dream just so I can sleep. As I'm articulating this, I'm like, wow, I need to do that right now.
Maybe you could do a little searching.
Right now, I need to do research on sleep. The last several years, because my kids are older, it's very hard to get them all in one place. So we've done New Year's Eve cruises the last couple of years. And so that's now become my favorite thing because I go with my husband sometimes and I go with various of my individual daughters, but that's when we get to all go together. And so that's now my happy place. And
you have to sell your house, but at least you can all go together.
Family first.
That's awesome. How is Disney on New Year's Eve? Have we ever, Steve, talked to anybody that's done that?
No, but we're booking one next year.
Disney World or Disney Cruise Line?
Disney Cruise Line.
Oh, it's great. It's absolutely great. Did you all hear my story about my most recent cruise, or did you read about it or something?
No, I should look, but do you want to tell us?
Sure. Well, so we were on the Fantasy this past New Year's Eve, and I mentioned that my family's really into Broadway. So, and we do a lot of, Broadway educational stuff and conferences and that sort of thing. So we're pretty knowledgeable about what, not just the actors, but what the behind the scenes people look like. And so my daughter Josie, she's 20, we were walking through the Europa place to get to the elevator, and she stops cold and she goes, "Mom, I think that's Kristen Lopez." And I'm like, "Really?" And so we just are standing there for a sec. And it was indeed Kristen Lopez, composer of Frozen, walking through. And my daughter, bless her heart, is often kind of shy, but puts out her hand and introduces herself. And she was so lovely and talks to us for 10 minutes about theater in New York. And, she asked my daughter's name and all this kind of stuff, and just lovely. And she said, the family's here on the cruise, and we're going to do a thing at the end of the cruise. And she told us what day it was on, but she's keep it on the DL for now. That was just awesome. And then on New Year's Eve, we were kind of dressed up a little fancy, and we were taking family photos and being goofy. And no, we weren't being goofy. We were being silly. And we're in the atrium by the tree. And I had taken pictures of the girls, and they had taken pictures of me and my husband. And I wanted somebody to take a picture of the whole family. So what I normally do in these situations is I look for a teenage girl with an adult, because you don't want to be a creeper and just stalk some teenage girl. But teenage girls take the best phone photos because
they know how.
Know what to do.
World.
They'll they'll know. They'll do a vertical and a horizontal and a portrait mode, and you don't even have to ask them. They just do it, right? So I see this girl, right? I see this girl who looks to be about 15, and there's a man who seems dad-like sort of behind her. So I say, "Hey, would you mind taking a picture of my family?" And she goes, "Sure." And then the man turns around, and it's Bobby Lopez, double EGOT Bobby Lopez. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to bother you all. And he's like, no, no, no. And he takes the camera from his daughter and takes our family's New Year's Eve pictures in front of the tree in the atrium on the Fantasy. So I'm like about to die, right? And my one daughter, Josie, who's like the biggest of all big Broadway fans, is like completely having a nervous breakdown, but he was so nice. A couple days later, they did do a whole thing in the Walt Disney Theater talking about the music of Frozen 2 and how they decided on themes, and they had performers from the main stage show sing some of the songs that were in it and some songs that had been cut, and it was just lovely. And the last thing they did at the end was went into the audience and had people sing parts of Let It Go, and my daughter got to sing Let It Go in front of the Walt Disney Theater for Bobby and Kristen Lopez, and it was just like, I can't even talk. It was like such a magical family moment that we will absolutely never forget.
That right there is, I think, what Disney dreams are made of.
What an amazing experience. How did the picture turn out? Were you guys able to hold it together while he was taking your picture?
It was good. It was good. Yeah. You know, in fact, I actually think it would have been better if his daughter
You're like, why did you take my camera?
I mean, it's like a really awesome story and a great memory that he took the picture, but I swear to God, I really wanted a teenage girl to do it.
Okay, I am so going to remember this. About what a brilliant idea to borrow teenage girls to take pictures.
They will do vertical and horizontal, up close. Like, you don't have to tell them. They automatically take 4 or 5, and they're always good.
They know how to tap the screen, right, make the light perfect. What a great idea.
Like, if you ask adults and it's like they don't have the same phone as you, they're like, I don't know. And then boys will just look at you like, why are you talking to me, old lady? Go away. You know?
Or they'll take a picture of your stomach.
Right.
Like that's where they'll center it. Yeah. Steve, that's never where you center the camera for a lady.
Well, there you go. I don't want to take away anything else that you've said this whole hour, Erin, but that might be the best tip for the whole podcast. Teenage girls yes. to take your photo.
And now we're arrested.
No, I said at the beginning, make sure they're with an adult.
Yes.
Well, as we kind of finish up here, what's next for you, Erin? Where are you guys headed next? You and your family, or you and your husband, or just you?
Well, she's going to find a cruise to go to sleep on.
I'm going to go to sleep on. Well, I just got back from 11 days at Disney World, so I'm recovering from that, and we do have next New Year's Eve booked on the Wonder, and so yeah, because like I said, because my kids are a strange age where they don't know exactly what they're doing all the time, we're holding off on booking cruises during the year to see when their jobs are happening, particularly over the summer. But the one thing we know we're doing when my twins graduate from college in 2021 is we're going to go on the ABD Japan. So we're really excited about that.
Japan seems like the perfect place to go on an ABD tour, along with the Egypt one that they're running this summer as well. So, well, thank you so much for coming on today, Erin. I really encourage anybody who has not looked at the Unofficial Guide to Disney Cruise Line, the book, or the Touring Plans website, or the Unofficial Guide's website. There's just so much information on there. I really want to thank you for all the work that you put into it, because it's just valuable for so many people out there. And before we finish up, where can people connect with you if they'd like to?
You can comment on my articles on Touring Plans, which are somewhat frequent. And I'm on Twitter at Ms. Erin Foster, MSERINFOSTER. That's probably the best way. Twitter.
Well, we want to wish you all the best as you continue your Disney journey. And I know you're like Christy and I and everybody else. Can't wait to find out more information on the Disney Wish and see what Disney Cruise Line brings out here in 2022. Yeah, 2022.
Why won't they tell us? Why won't they tell us?
I know. Well, you think we're not going to get any prices until we go to book, and then that's going to be insane, because that's when you find out, or is that when you're going to find out what the different room categories are? I mean, it can't be like a regular release, can they?
I don't know. It makes me want to cry when I think of that. Their website's going to crash. The phone people aren't going to know. Every travel agent is going to have a complete and total nervous breakdown. I feel for these people. I don't know. I mean, we have rumors. Len has some contacts, and they tell him different things. There's I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't.
Well, thanks again, Erin. We really appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
You guys are fun. Thanks for having me.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Erin for coming on and sharing her experiences traveling with Disney Cruise Line and writing for the Unofficial Guide to Disney Cruise Line and her work over at Touring Plans. It's always fun to catch up with her. Just she's a character. We love talking with her and really do appreciate her coming on and sharing all of her knowledge with all of you out there. Well, we're kind of in some crazy times right now with the cruise line shut down and the park shut down, but
Rest assured, we've got quite a few back episodes that we have already recorded, which we will continue to bring out to you. And there's still a lot of other people that we have not gotten on recently to record their kind of experiences with Disney Cruise Line and Adventures by Disney, as well as we got a couple Run Disney episodes in the works as well. So I want to thank each and every one of you out there for coming back and taking a listen every week and interacting with us either on Facebook, Instagram, or with myself on Twitter as well. So be well out there. These crazy times will pass eventually, but take care of each other, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and all of us here, Chris, Christy, and me, Steve, at the DCL Podcast will continue putting these shows out to add a little bright spots and some entertainment in the weeks ahead. And I know that all of us will be back out there on the water sometime soon, leading those adventures as we all head back out on the oceans and sail with Disney Cruise Line again. So best of luck to everybody out there. Be well, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the DCL Podcast. Thanks, everybody.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.